All right, gentlemen. So I'll kick things off. Nicole, thanks for coordinating this, unique conference call with Accedian and EvoStream, just to get introductions out there. My name is Stephen Joseph. I'm going to be hosting this call. I'm also the president and founder of EvoStream Communications. We are a full-service IT solutions provider, and we work with vendors. And one of those vendors that we're really excited to speak with today is Accedian. So I'm going to introduce Greg Spear and Michael Bacon. But before I do that, I just want to thank you, Nicole and Henry, for setting this up and getting us all together today. So we appreciate that. With that, Greg, and then Michael, if you could just briefly introduce yourselves, your roles at Accedian, and then we'll get started.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Greg Spear. I'm the Director of Solution Enablement here at Accedian. So pretty much anything to do with enablement, whether it's for our Accedians or our customers or our partners. I've been fortunate enough to be at Accedian for about 15 years now. So I've been here pretty much from the beginning. So I'll be able to, hopefully answer any questions regarding the company's history, how we ended up where we are today, and so forth.
Great. Thanks, Greg.
And I'm Michael Bacon. I'm the Director of Enterprise Solutions Marketing here at Accedian. I've been here for a few years, so I'm just glad to be part of a good team.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. Well, Greg, you mentioned your tenure at Accedian, and I think that's a good place to start, possibly. I ran into Accedian through a relationship I have with Kevin Baranowski, as you know. Kevin and I have worked together for many years in the telecom space. We actually worked at AT&T together, and then a few different roles where we collaborated as integrator, partner. And, one of the things that Kevin was really excited about when he joined Accedian, and I hope you can kind of share today with everyone, is sort of the history of your product, your company, how you get into the monitoring and service market from a carrier standpoint, and then maybe tell us a little bit more about the actual products and services that you started to offer and how they were positioned.
Yeah. And it's interesting because this week I was, you scroll through LinkedIn sometimes and things catch your eye, and it's the 45th anniversary of TCP. And carrier Ethernet's been around, just a bit longer than that, more or less, if you figure when Bob actually invented it. But it's interesting, those two technologies are really the foundation for a lot of what we're doing today. When we think of carrier Ethernet and TCP, they're really the building blocks for whether it's applications, network performance, or anything like that. And how Accedian came into as we started was, if you think back, 15, 20 years ago, Ethernet was kind of a best effort type of scenario, right? I remember calling providers when I started working at Accedian, and I came from companies that were doing work for service providers. I worked with Cisco gear, small enterprises, and so forth. And Ethernet was kind of a best service. The internet was kind of, well, if it works, great. But then we were there monitoring, looking at different services, being able to simulate traffic to find out what the Ethernet performance was and things like that. And some of these, carriers and so forth were like, well, that's great, but if there's a problem, somebody will call. And then, as things evolved, Ethernet became the primary source of communication, whereas other methods, the traditional TDM lines and things like that, they were now not really as relevant as they were. And where Accedian really fit in is we were there from the beginning, being able to provide equipment that was not doing Ethernet testing as a side hustle, shall we say. It was purpose built to do Ethernet verification, Ethernet demarcation, and so forth. And that was great. But, like all companies that evolve, instead of just saying we've done a great work, we have a market that we can run for the rest of our lives and we can retire, it grew from there. So then it became, doing this in a hardware was fantastic, right? We were helping our customers, but it became a labor to get all this hardware installed, to maintain it. And then we said, we really need to, and actually a customer forced us in a way to virtualize our solution. And an example of that is if we were able to instrument 30,000 towers in about 2 years using hardware. We were able.
When you say customer, sorry to interrupt, Greg, but just one understands what at that time. What did your typical customer look like? Was that a carrier? Was that a large enterprise?
At that point, it was a carrier. A lot of tier 2 carriers, tier 3s, some tier 1s we were breaking into as they were starting to use it. But what happened was tier 2s were delivering services to tier 1s, and we were able to provide the tier 2s with the instrumentation to show the reports to the tier 1s that they were delivering what they were supposed to. And then from there, it became, well, enterprises said, well, we could use that as well. So that was the evolution of how that went. But with the software, the hardware to software, that allowed us to scale. We were, as I said, we could do 30,000 towers in 2 years, and we went and did 160,000 towers in 90 days with software, right? And that was with a tier 1 in India that we were working with, and that's where really now our solution was much easier to deploy, much easier to use. And then as we move on in time, right, now we have our network monitoring, our performance, this and that, service activation testing. But the user experience was becoming what everybody was more and more interested in. And so through an acquisition, we started doing monitoring of the user experience. In other words, the TCP stack, the applications, the server response time, and so forth. So now,
typical user in that experience? Is it a network operations center? What is that experience transferred to? Who is that person?
So the application monitoring was mainly being used by enterprise. So that's where now Accedian had the carrier, customers, and now through this acquisition, now we're working with a lot of enterprise customers that are solely looking at application from a pure application monitoring point of view. In other words, for them, looking at the traffic that's there, giving them an idea of what's happening is great. What we brought now is 2 ways of looking at it. The network, where we're actively testing different performances in the network, and the user experience, monitoring the actual user traffic going back and forth. And what that gave Accedian is the ability to rapidly determine, is it a network problem? Is it an application problem? Who should I be, talking to? So that was the evolution from, software, from hardware to software, and now purely network to network and application and user experience. And then not a big leap from there is cybersecurity, right? Network detection and response. And that came about, much like a lot of things at Accedian. We found out that customers were using our application monitoring as part of their security because we had all the information, right? They didn't have to store everything to disk. We had the whole conversations. They could see where things would where people were coming into the network that shouldn't be there, what they had seen, what they had touched. So that's where now we started doing the NDR product called the Interceptor, using the same tools that we had. So analytics, Interceptor, being able to bring that all together.
So analytics is the enterprise and network component.
Correct.
Interceptor, for people who are listening, is the security and applications component, would we say, or are those separate?
They would be separate, yeah. But they all, the beauty, Stephen, is they're all in the same screen, right? So when you log into analytics, you can take a look at the network, you can take a look at the application, and you can take a look at security alerts that are happening. So, and in today's world, often these are related, right? A security event might have an impact on the network, and so forth.
Great. Yeah, and that's, kind of the segue into why, a partnership with Accedian and EvoStream makes so much sense. It might make a little bit of sense for me to explain to listeners what we do, because a lot of our listeners are consultants, agents, brokers in the telecom and IT space. So EvoStream Communications is a full-service IT solutions provider. We're also a consultancy. So when we're working with customers, we use a process, it's very standard, where we do a full network assessment. right? We do the discovery. We learn about not only the network, but the applications as you described. In many cases today, our customers are looking at not only current performance, but the cloud. And they're curious whether there's going to be a feasibility issue when they're moving to the cloud, and what that performance is going to look like as their network changes. Another modification or change that customers are looking at is SD-WAN and SASE as far as their network, wide area network and security components go, especially on the edge. And when we're looking at doing an assessment for them, what we want to understand before we take them into a design or implementation phase is, what is the benchmark? Where are we at today? Where's the performance? Where are the challenges? And many customers are not doing that. They're not really, they're not really analyzing their current network performance and applications. So for us as an advisor, and for any advisors out there, one of the recommendations that we want to start making now that we have this relationship is for customers to make that initial investment in Accedian to the Skylight, platform. And as we go into an implementation and we eventually roll out technology and we are in life cycle, of course, nothing's going to be perfect. So we want to also then be able to double back and see where we started and then see how the performance has changed, if it's been upgraded. If not, is there an issue from a technology standpoint that we can address as consultants? Now, not all firms have engineering or consulting backgrounds in a practice. So one of the things I wanted to ask you is from an interpretation of the intelligence that you guys provide, does Accedian have a professional services and consulting practice for customers and for agents like myself that may need assistance in that area, with the actual interpretations, intelligence, and advisory component?
Yes, for sure, and we have it on both fronts. On the security side, we have a cybersecurity team that we can work on with that. But also when it comes to best practices, we have a professional services team that has really grown a lot over the years. And as you said, people don't have the expertise in house. Another I think important factor here as well is providing folks with dashboards and data that are user friendly, right? If you and we're all like professional services and helping, but if you need unlimited hours and hours and hours to understand this, we've done something wrong as well. And that's part of the interface where we work with our customers to help them build dashboards that are meaningful, so that they can go in there and rapidly see what's happening. And you raise an important point as well, because the hardest thing to argue against is a perception, right? It used to be like this, or it should have been like this before, or that's and without having these numbers and the way of doing it, it really makes it difficult once you've gone halfway down the path to try and correct a perception that was the way it was before. But yes,
I'd like to add to that. So our professional services, we break it up a little in terms of we help with the initial install. But we can also customize to meet your needs. But in addition to that, even when we look at our solution, we look at complementing what customers already have and making the best of the world they live in. So take our technology and plug it in, and it works well, it plays well with other technologies. But you touched on some of the things that we do, like creating baselines, and be able to measure against the baseline is huge, especially during a cloud migration, as an example. So we have services that start at the install level, looking at what your requirements are, creating the baselines, and then helping you customize it to meet your needs, and then ongoing to, land and expand, so to speak, in your environment.
Got it. And for customers that, may have ongoing issues, say with their service provider, right? The typical finger pointing scenario, right? And we work with clients like this all the time, and carriers, unfortunately, that the carrier doesn't provide the level of intelligence to diagnose, network performance issues. Sometimes those products and services are additional costs, perhaps, And the customer, when they experience a service issue, especially at the application layer where they can't determine, is this, a provider issue? Is it a network issue? They need a watchdog, so to speak, right? So is the Skylight platform something that carriers and or enterprise customers can use to hopefully eliminate some of that finger pointing?
Absolutely. I think we bring value to both the service provider and the enterprise customer. From a service provider side, a lot of the service providers are getting more proactive in terms of providing portals to their customers that give visibility into the services that they're providing. And so customers appreciate that because now there's no blind spots. But on the other side, just keeping service providers accountable in terms of what, I paid for in terms of my SLA agreement, and making sure I get the service that I paid for. So it works both ways. But I think you're going to see a lot of service providers are getting very proactive with this model and really engaging the customer. And then there's the whole value that comes from that with full visibility from your service provider layer all the way through the enterprise and into the cloud and back. So that's something we specialize on both ends on.
Yeah, so because there's, and like Michael said, and there's two sides to this, right? There's MTTR, right? Mean time to repair. When's it going to get fixed? But when it comes to the service provider or somebody providing a service, there's MTTI, right? Mean time to innocence. How long can I go from it's my problem to and to stop wasting other people's time as well? Stop looking at the network. You need to look somewhere else. So that's another important factor is the resolution time will go down quite rapidly as well.
In terms of finger pointing, I also want to point out that there's also a real opportunity for service providers and enterprises to do more collaboration now because of that full visibility. And you're seeing that things are getting responded to much quicker and more efficiently because of that.
Got it. Mean time to innocence. I haven't heard that before, Greg. So
One of my favorites.
I guess if you're new to Accedian, right, and you're trying to think in the marketplace of competition, folks that do something similar or maybe dissimilar to you, that's within your, within your sphere of focus. Can you name any competitors out there, and possibly if there are competitive differences between Accedian and those competitors?
Yeah, there's several competitors that we have. Of course, we go up against like Riverbed, NetScout, SolarWinds, Live Action, as well as ExtraHop. I think the big distinction that we can make here is that, number one, we've got a really good track record with service providers. We do that very well. But now we also have something a lot of our competitors don't have, with the exception of maybe ExtraHop. We now have a built-in NDR service as well. So with one single sensor, you can get both the benefits of performance management as well as security in your network, which is huge. And a lot of our competitors don't offer that. We also have the ability to really help in different use cases. And, for example, in SD-WAN. SD-WAN is really specialized and focused on rerouting of workloads, but it also can mask a lot of performance issues. So we can give some visibility there where some of the competitors are not maybe doing that or focused on that. But Greg, you have anything to add to that?
Nope. So I think you covered it all well. And when it comes to the history of Accedian, and I think another part that we don't maybe think about so much is how we've taken a big piece of hardware to a piece of software, and now we're getting down to agents and very, very small pieces of software that are very key to give, throughput performance, trace route information, application monitoring, active monitoring with a very small footprint. And the ability to do that is giving our customers the flexibility to turn around and say, man, if only I could see this blind spot over here. Not a problem, right? If only we could do this type of test over here. You've heard the ones of we have livestock instead of pets, right? These small softwares they're livestock. They can be deployed. They can be turned up by an orchestrator, turned down when they're not needed. it just gives our customers that flexibility. And one thing we haven't talked about is how we monetize this, but they can install these sensors, not a problem. What they pay for is the data that we're processing to give them the information. So how we collect the data, where we put sensors, where these softwares are needed is transparent in the billing cycle. It really comes down to how much information we're digesting and processing for the customer.
Got it. And especially, customers are always looking for not only new technology and migrating to new technology because it's going to provide a perceived upgrade, but what they're really trying to achieve is digital transformation, right? And I think the key component to that from so many different angles is analytics and having the information so that you can use data science to, for lack of a better term, transform, again, product services, monetize, big data and some of the technologies that, aging companies are really looking to use to reinvent themselves, right? And this is it sounds like this is one of many components to that.
Yeah, and I was at the World AI Summit in Montreal. I was here a few weeks ago. It was a pretty good event. A couple of thousand people were there. A lot of universities, carriers and things like that. And what we were talking about when they would come to our booth was, the amount of data we're producing today has just ballooned, and for humans to process all this information is becoming more and more and more difficult. And through the help of machine learning and AI and data cleaning and all the things that we're doing, we're able to go from 100 or 1,000 alerts down to one event. Now, the event, we're going to have the history in there of it, but what we're doing is grooming the data so that it makes more sense to a user or to an operator or anybody looking at this, a consultant, to be able to rapidly go down and go figure out what's going on. We still need the humans for now, but another part of what's happening and talking about AI and decision making is now we're providing data to other applications or orchestrators that are now taking action, sort of a closed loop automation. So that's part of the future as well, is improving the data and how the data is sorted and treated so that other softwares can now take action on this data. And we're working with Cisco on that and other folks as well.
So that brings up a question I have, depending on, I guess, the use case, right? And I'm thinking about manufacturing, I'm thinking about healthcare, industries that have very expensive machinery or equipment, and they're trying to understand, so we kind of keep always talking about the network component because, like, I'm a network guy, right? Telecom. And one of the things that I'm curious about, and this may be outside of, your scope, but if you have an MRI or imaging machine, or you have a piece of heavy machinery and you've made a huge investment in that, right? It's something that's supposedly going to change your supply chain or your, assembly line. To what degree does an Accedian sort of probe provide, performance on say the land, right? And what type of dashboard or interface is somebody going to get that may be in more of an operational role? Is this something that is just for the network guys, or is it a tool that may be able to be used for, say, a facilities manager or an operations person that wants to understand how equipment is performing?
Yeah, this gets in the whole IoT device discussion as well, right? In terms of monitoring devices and the performance of those devices. So there's a use case that we're working on in terms of manufacturing and healthcare, where we would be able to monitor some IoT devices that are connected to the network, as an example, right? So where we're able to get visibility into performance data from those devices, absolutely, we can bring that into our tool. Now, as an example, I don't have examples of data types. Maybe Greg does, but this is something we're working on right now. so that we can actually focus on the verticals and have a story there for them. As you know, it's a critical need. Also, on the other flip side of that is also the applications that are tied to those devices. So there's, like, for example, in healthcare, EHR applications, the different applications, some of those are tied to IoT devices and some of the data that goes back to that. So you have to guarantee availability and things like that. So
another example is we're working with a customer, and you think of server information, right? Temperature, CPU usage, memory usage, and that's something that typically, when it comes to looking at application monitoring or network monitoring, you're not looking at that, right? You're looking at information going back and forth and figuring, well, this server is slow to respond, or this firewall is a bottleneck. But what we're doing with one customer was actually taking those KPIs, which are temperature, usage, and we're able to line them up with the user experience and the network performance. So what that's giving them, and I think that ties in to this device, this expensive machine that could be a robot doing a function. We could be pulling KPIs from that unit and lining them up with others and saying the unit is performing slowly today, and we believe it's because blah blah blah. Instead of it's performing slowly, let's take a look at this, let's take a look at that. Because the key to a lot of what we do is being able to look at data at the same time. And this is what troubleshooting people have been doing for their whole lives, right? Give me the logs for this, give me the logs for that, give me the logs for that. If the timestamps are good, they'll put them on a table and they'll sort them out and they'll figure it out. And we're just doing that visually and rapidly, as opposed to looking at 5 different sources of data.
But I also think the benefit that we bring in terms of our solution is we're one of the few solutions that has that analytic engine, which means that you can ingest third-party data tied to those machines and bring it into a single dashboard. So you can tie all the KPIs back to a particular business outcome or to a particular hardware device, and then monitor some of the things that Greg's talked about. And those are the types of things we're looking at doing it in the healthcare and the manufacturing space specifically right now.
Cool. And I hate to put you on the spot, but is there a chance that some point during this call we could see what that dashboard looks like?
Yes, sir.
That'd be cool. And while we do that, one of the things that you mentioned are kind of use cases. Is there a classic use case, or is there a particular vertical that really is right in focus for Accedian, or is it something that's more ubiquitous across all verticals?
Well, it does work across all verticals, our solution. However, we really have a lot of work we're putting in right now around manufacturing and healthcare. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, we already have, just to be clear, we already have manufacturing and healthcare case studies, and we've already have some customers that, leverage our technology, such as monitoring critical applications tied to healthcare or manufacturing and some of those things. And also, our customers get very creative in terms of how they use our technology, especially in the manufacturing side, where time is money, productivity rates are monitored. Operational efficiencies are monitored because it affects the bottom line. So, for example, our granular visibility capability that we have helps in robotics and things like that, because every microsecond matters. Things that are missed can actually compound and add up to a lot of time and a lot of wasted, money. So, yeah, we're definitely focused on those 2 areas right now, and we're going to be expanding into some other areas as well coming into the later part of the year.
Great. I mean, I have to kind of agree right now, many of the customers that we're working with seem to be the healthcare space, and then, the manufacturing space is just changing dramatically. And you mentioned IoT, right? Which is an area where, we see customers, applying IoT in the most unique ways. But the component that we're always challenged with is, as you mentioned, pulling the logs and making, intelligent decisions based on everything that we're collecting, right? So, as consultants and network, advisors, we're still trying to, figure that out with our clients, right? And having these tools in place, as you said, Greg, make sure that we can make, inferences based on timestamps and what's going on at the same time. There are no coincidences usually, right? So this additional component is just one, it's probably one slice of the pie for customers that are trying to solve those types of problems, again, going towards digital transformation and changing from the inside out the way they do business. So, Greg, I put you on the spot a couple of minutes ago.
Yeah,
I'm ready to see this dashboard because it sounds like everything is sort of consolidated, and we can make a lot of decisions from this, intuitive software that you have.
Do you see that now?
We do.
Okay. So basically what we have is, and here we're just looking at an executive view, but the screen, the layout can be sliced and diced many different ways. And then, we have, our different tabs over here. If you want to take a look at our cybersecurity, we just click on there. But at a glance over here, right, we're looking at our wide area network health. We're looking at our application health. We can come down over here and take a look at different alerts that would be happening. So my user experience versus my raised alerts. So we were able to compare those as they go along. We could be taking a look at different regions, different service providers. So which service provider is giving me more alerts compared to another one. And then we could look at our business critical applications, right, how they're performing, and being able to drill down on different screens from there. And,
Sorry to interrupt, Greg, but this is Skylight, correct?
Correct. This is Skylight Analytics. And basically what we're looking at here is all the capture data, whether it's from applications that we're looking at over here, whether it's from network sensors. And if we come over here, we can see our cyber resiliency screen that is over here. And, we take a look over here at different events. Remember I said we could take multiple alerts or so forth and bring them into events, drill down. I would like to investigate this event. So this is the type of, intuitive information that we're able to provide to the users at a glance. So not needing to go to different devices. Let me talk to the security person. Let me talk to the application person, right? We can come back over here and take a look at everything from this one. Now, as Michael was talking, right, we have many ways of showing the data, many types of different views, customer portals. We see cloud migration, audits of sensor capture, which is information regarding application monitoring, financial services. So we have these different types of dashboards that are canned, and then we can use those when we're working with our partners or customers to not start with a blank screen, right? We can start with these and populate the data, and then tweak them as needed. So all that to say, right? We're able to from here, if somebody wanted to drill down more onto the application side, or they wanted to see a shorter time frame, I might just want to see, the last hour or something like that. They can just come back over here and then say, oh, I'd like to drill in on my applications for that time. And it's going to bring up, which service provider it was on, which location they were from, which application we were looking at with the user experience versus the round trip time versus the server response time. So being able to see, right, correlation between round trip time and user experience right here, well, that's telling us the user experience was impacted, but there was also a network condition that happened at the same time.
Yeah, and Greg, what this really would be helpful for, I think, again, for folks that are listening, this is the Skylight platform. So Accedian has two platforms, Skylight and Interceptor. Interceptor, think about more on the security front. But when we look at SD-WAN, oftentimes what a customer is doing with their SD-WAN is they're multi-homing through multiple providers, right? And they've got, no indication that anything's happened because the SD-WAN works, right? A good SD-WAN is going to make sure that there's no hiccups on a phone call, or, if there is an internet issue with one of your providers, that the user experience really isn't interrupted. However, and that's good and it's bad, right? Because sometimes you don't know that there's an issue, right? And that issue may eventually get to the point where there's prolonged, or chronic, interference that the carrier is getting away with, right? Because carrier A is doing the job that carrier B is supposed to be doing. And what we want to do is we want to be able to go back and, just through best practices and stewardship reviews, have the intelligence to say, look, you guys had a great month. However, what we're realizing is that, I don't want to name a carrier right now, but carrier B is not doing its job. They're getting away with it because carrier A continues to pick up the slack on the circuit, right? So what I like here is that from the information you guys are providing as someone who recommends SD-WAN products, right? We also want to service and support that product and make sure, not only the service provider, but the SD-WAN provider is not is being held accountable, as we said before, throughout that life cycle, even when things go right, not just when things go wrong. I can imagine what it's like if there is, a major outage or an issue, and you guys have to go into sort of triage mode. But those are often not the examples that we like to point out to a customer when we're talking about network performance and SD-WAN, especially when we're selecting carriers, because customers are sensitive, and preferential oftentimes to one or two carriers, right? And if they've never felt the issue, that can just create a false sense of security in a certain provider. And what we like to do is demonstrate that, with a product like this, we can keep these carriers honest, and we can also be honest with ourselves to make sure we understand when we're looking to make a change, who actually is performing throughout the life cycle of a contract. And that performance isn't necessarily always going to be picked up by, an outage, right? Or your SD-WAN monitoring or orchestrator tool. So
SD-WAN is it's like the Tylenol, right, of networks. It's going to mask the problem. You still have a bad knee, but you don't feel it anymore, right? So now when you run out of Tylenol, then all of a sudden your knee's shot, right? And we actually are working with a tier one carrier who wants to prove to their SD-WAN customers that their link is the best link, right? So much like you're saying, right, another link is performing poorly, the SD-WAN box is making up for it. And the flip side of that is some customers might be saying, well, I'm paying, $1,000 a month for this, and I'm paying $100 for this. My SD-WAN box is doing a great job. I'm just going to shut this one down because, I'll just go on the other one, just to find out that it's not it wasn't being distributed equally, shall we say. So that's a very interesting use case.
It is. I would add to that, though, that user experience in the SD-WAN world is also important, because while it may reroute things, it doesn't always keep the same quality of experience. It's going to take the best available resource it has, but still being able to monitor end user experience in the SD-WAN world is huge, in my opinion. But you're still going to see some degradation of quality and performance in some cases, although you may not notice it, but it is still there in some cases.
Yeah, and I'd imagine that there's similar kind of use cases when we look at the security component and interceptor as well. So is that something, am I onto something there, or can you give a use case as far as where, from a security standpoint, you have multiple, providers in the stack, right? And one of those components is failing, but it's being sort of backstopped by another component. Does the interceptor product provide the same level of intelligence and monitoring to diagnose those types of finger pointing issues?
So our security solution is the same. Actually, both Skylight and Interceptor are the same platform, the same sensor. So it's the same L2 through L7 data traffic that we're collecting and analyzing. So from that perspective, we have visibility across your network. And so, as you know, today, most of the new threats that we see in the market are actually in the network itself, whether that be a supply chain attack or an insider threat or whatever. So the visibility that we have is to the traffic itself within the network. And so whatever the bounds of your network are, that's what we're going to see.
So if I'm a customer that's just relying on, say, an EDR solution, an endpoint, type of solution, that's not enough. We tell customers that all the time, that a lot of these attacks, they come from inside the network.
Yep.
What you're saying is Interceptor can provide that additional level of intelligence to alert customers that are naive to this, that this type of, there's a gap, right, in this type of issue, or, malicious attack is coming from a different vantage point within the network.
Absolutely. And I think that's kind of the problem that we have in the market, is that a lot of customers don't understand that they need a network detection and response solution, because they've been taught that perimeter defense is enough. But right now, most of the havoc that's done through ransomware and stuff is actually in the network itself. So an EDR solution is not going to protect you from that. It's gonna detect things that are on the endpoint, which may be at somebody's house or in the network itself, but it's not going to detect all the threats that were in the network through the data traffic that you have. So this is essential to most customers, and a lot of customers have a gaping hole right now because they don't have an NDR solution.
Got it. I appreciate that. Well, I think we've covered a lot, gentlemen, certainly. And if there's anything we've missed, obviously we want to make sure that, everyone who's listening has a chance to contact us directly. But let's say, we're in a position where, to kind of wrap this up, we're interested in the product, right? Either or both, the network performance tool and an Interceptor. How do you get started? Is there a proof of concept? Is there an entry point for, say, your middle market client? Those are the customers we're normally serving, right? They're enterprise. They've got sophisticated applications, multiple locations, but they're not, Coca-Cola or, Morgan Stanley as far as their budget goes. What's sort of the entry point? How do you get customers, working with you and using your product?
So, and as you said, it's a good, is it a large enterprise or medium enterprise? Is it a carrier? And we use the term now, proof of value, because we figure the concept's been done. We know it works, right? So now we're into a proof of value scenario, and basically we work with our solution engineers or our partners teams, and we do have training that people go through and so forth that helps evaluate what will be the requirements, how will this be installed. We'll be using which probes will we be using, software, hardware, and things like that. So there's a process of going through what the customer would need or use, and once again, that's also depends on the customer. Some customers have a very savvy IT technical team, and they go, just give me the what I need and I'll get it done and I'll follow up with you. To the customer that says, I don't want to do anything, can you guys actually come in here and do it? And we'll do a scope of work with them, sort out how many hours we need to do what they need to do, and do it like that. So it really goes from one to the other. And when it comes to, like, as you talked about Coca-Cola and things like that, then we have a process with our solution engineers. We get into a Jira where everything gets logged. We have documentations that are put together for scope of work. So it really depends on the type of project it's going to be. And we'll, it goes through a vetting first to make sure everything is going to adhere to what the customer wants. We usually will also have a success criteria established first, right? What is the solution, or what is the issue we're trying to fix, or what is the value that we're trying to bring? Make sure that's clearly understood and that can be proven and so forth. So try to make it as efficient as possible, in the sense that everybody's getting what they want. Everything's clear before we get started.
Got it. So whether you're just a broker agent and we need you to come in to do that sort of proof of value, as you mentioned, or assessment, or you're a firm like ours that does the consulting work, and we're going to kind of set the table for you. I think based on our conversation, Accedian can play an integral role amongst the customer, the carrier, and the advisor to kind of sum things up. So I really appreciate you gentlemen taking the time to dive deep into this subject today. I think as we mentioned earlier, customers are really struggling to make sense of all of the investments that they're subscribing to, and having tools at the CISO level, at the operational level, as we talked about, for all industries, but specifically for those that are really trying to transform, right, and to use data science, data analytics to make sense of daily events, but then oftentimes as we mentioned with the SD-WAN, long-term investments and the relationships that they're investing in to make sure that everyone is performing, right? So is there anything that I may have left out or missed, or you want to kind of mention to the audience before we wrap this up?
Maybe just one thing from Michael might have said, but one thing we didn't really touch on is Skylight Performance Analytics is a cloud-based solution. So when we talk about doing a POV or something like that, there's not a lot of legwork to do at the remote site. All the analytics, everything there is in the cloud. What we do is make sure we put the right type of probe that's giving us the right type of data that we're sending to analytics. So I don't want to scare people away that, this looks like a complicated install. Most of what we're doing is in the cloud. We just need to get that data that we're looking for and bring it to them.
Yeah, I had one thing to add. First of all, thank you for your time today too, Stephen. It's been really a good meeting and good topics that were discussed. So I just want to end with this. I had met with a group of CIOs last year, and it's really interesting because there's something starting to happen in the market that we're starting to see where performance teams and security teams are having to collaborate and consolidate tools, etc. For example, this CIO had a performance issue, so they thought happened in their network, and they spent about 3 days on it, only to find out 3 days later it was a security breach in their network. Because they had separate tools, and those tools didn't talk to each other, and because they had separate teams that didn't collaborate, this kind of gave the company a black eye, and the CIO was really concerned. And in addition to that, some of our conversation, as there was a group of a panel of CIOs, was that now many organizations, especially when you talk about small and mid-sized enterprises, just don't have the budget for 2 teams anymore, or a CISO and a CIO. So I thought this would be something maybe you could do a future segment on, maybe, but it's something that's really resonating in the market right now. Is companies are trying to, as you said, digital transformation, but they're also trying to reduce cost and also reduce risk and drive more collaboration across teams. So just thought I would add that.
And a big trend that we see, and we're asked to do sometimes as well, is the fractional CISO role or CIO role. And if we come in and we don't do a full, assessment, right? A lot of customers want us to do triage, but when we don't have the intelligence, it's very difficult to do. And that's very, very much in line with what you say. Customers are spending money in different places, and what their expectation is that an expert's going to come in and be able to instantly diagnose a problem. And that is possible if that expert is given a full, layout of everything that's been going on, the full history, of the network. But, most customers don't have that. So we try to, recommend they install this intelligence before they set that expectation. And then on the back end, if all of that is being logged by your tool, when they hire that, fractional CIO or CISO to come in and make sense of what's been going on and provide, a basic report, all that information's at their fingertips. And that's where the data scientists, the smart guys that come in can really make a great use, like as you said, of the value, right, of this type of product or service. That's where that kind of ROI comes back.
Hey guys, thanks again for listening to this video. Again, we're the Modern Enterprise, and we're trying to bring leadership, entrepreneurship, and everything tech business to you through this podcast. Now, if you want to get in touch with us, of course, we love it when you direct message us on LinkedIn, comment, share this post, and please check out our YouTube channel and on Instagram or directly at www.evo-stream.com.